body language.
With the Behavior Panel.
Nothing gets past these two. I can't eat. I can't sleep. What about the child?
I don't think we even heard his name.
Family ain't the same without family.
There's a tremendous amount of red flagging going on here.
She said, just let's kill your parents.
She's trying to almost romance you as she goes along.
She was telling the story like you're telling at a slumber party. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Did you know that everything you do and every little movement your body makes tells a story? But the thing is, it might not be the story you're trying to convey, the story you're trying to tell. Now, I've often pointed out the times when one of my guests' body language doesn't match the story they're trying to sell to me. Well, today, you at home are going to learn all of the tips, tricks, and clues to be able to tell what people are really saying. In order to do that, I'll be joined by two of the top body language and human behavior experts in the world. Nothing gets past these two. I mean, it's like trying to smuggle sunrise by a rooster. From liars to criminals to murderers to downright psychopaths, there are clues to look for. Now, first up, tragically, people go missing all the time. Many times, they are young children who, in the words of their parents, suddenly just up and vanish. Well, today we're looking at two such tragedies. Teresa Balboa is one such mother, was charged with capital murder for the killing of her 5-year-old stepson, Samuel Olson, whose body was found decomposing in a plastic storage bin. He was killed by a blow to the head. Take a look.
Teresa Balboa appearing for the first time this morning.
She is the focus of an investigation into the disappearance and presumed death of Samuel Olson. Samuel, just 6 years old, is the son of Balboa's boyfriend. A judge increased the bond for Teresa Balboa today.
$600,000. That's $100,000 more than what was set on Friday.
Teresa Balboa is charged with capital murder.
She allegedly hit 5-year-old Samuel Olson with a blunt object, killing him on or about May 12th.
Prosecutors allege Balboa knew Samuel was dead long before she reported him missing May 27th, 17 days earlier.
Next, prosecutors say they will present the case to a grand jury, and then the district attorney will decide if they'll pursue the death penalty.
Joining me is Scott Rouse. Now, Scott is a behavior analyst and body language expert. He holds multiple certificates in advanced interrogation training and has been trained alongside the FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Military Intelligence, and Department of Defense. He's an expert consultant to law enforcement as well as successful CEOs, attorneys, executives, and entertainers. Joining us virtually is Greg Hartley. Now, Greg is an author, a senior corporate executive whose expertise as an interrogator earned him honors with the U.S. Army, businesses, private investigators, attorneys, human resource professionals, and he's been relied on for his knowledge in every walk of life regarding human behavior and body language. So, Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Doc. Glad to be here.
Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you both. Now, in full disclosure, these are two friends of mine. We've worked together a lot. I know them both well, and so I'll just offer that up.
Okay.
So let's just jump right in and start looking at some things, right? Now, you just looked at the story about Balboa. We took a look at that. And this involved little Samuel Olson.
Yes.
And and Greg, you just chime in at any time. And let's take a look at this first clip in regards to the tragic story of 5-year-old Samuel, who was reported missing. Now, in this first clip, Samuel's father is giving an interview desperate to find his son.
This must be some rough times. Can you tell me what it's been like?
I feel like I'm living in a nightmare I can't wake up from. No parent should ever have to feel this. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm at a loss for words, man.
I understand. Have the police told you anything or given you any...
We're doing our best right now to get out there and search for him. We're trying to cooperate and give them everything. We've given them everything that we can. Any little information we think is important or even as insignificant as we think it is, we still hand it over. So we're just trying to do everything we can to play our part to help bring my son home safe, because that's all that matters at the end of today is please help me find my son.
All right, I'll go first here and talk about this from a psychological perspective.
Perfect.
My immediate reaction when I saw this the first time was, this was all about him.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't about his son. It was like, I'm hurting. This is trouble for me. I have pain. I have problems. His body didn't say that, but his words were saying that. It was not about his son. You expect him to be saying, please, people, my son, he's probably scared. He's probably afraid. I can only imagine right now that he's not with us. I'm worried that it was all about him and what he's doing and he's feeling and he's experiencing. Exactly. So, Scott, what was the first thing you saw?
Well, he's acting the way someone who's missing a child should act. He's crying, he's doing all those things, but like you said, he's talking about himself.
And Greg?
Yeah, so a couple of things. If you watch Scott talking to you, he raised his brow as he's talking because he's asking you for approval as he's talking about something. We expect a lot of this guy having congruent face messaging. His forehead should be wrinkled and torn as he's feeling all this pain. Whether he had anything to do with it's another story. He's not asking for help. He's not making this an urgent plea. And as you said, he's just tying it back to him constantly. Not my little kid's gone. He's scared. There's a lot of fear and all of that in the lower face, but his lower and upper faces don't match.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at that. Let's go over here, Scott. Now, Greg, what you're talking about here is there's what we call a grief muscle. Grief muscle's not working, correct?
That's correct, and that's a bunch of muscles. There are 3 or 4 muscles through your forehead, and then this arch at the top that I'm doing right there. You see that in grief in people, and everybody's more or less pronounced, but he doesn't have forehead involvement at the time he's talking about really complex problems.
Okay, and that may sound funny to people at home, but that's what these experts look at when they're reading someone that's making these statements. There are certain emotions, and when you're expressing those emotions, there are congruencies in the body that should be occurring while you're emoting. And if that's not happening, then you've got incongruency. Right. And look at what's happening here. I feel like I'm living, and as you go through this, you just continue to see when he's talking, again, I can't wake up from it. No parent talking to him. I can't eat. I can't sleep. You see, everything's about him. What about the child?
Like we were talking about earlier, this is what's supposed to happen. Where is he? My child. And say his name a couple times. I don't think we even heard his name.
All right, when we come back, it was the heartbreaking murder of a 5-week-old baby. We'll be right back.
Monday. The premiere episode of Dr. Phil, a pregnant woman thrust into the spotlight.
I had to carry my baby to bury my baby.
After a devastating diagnosis.
Speaking out for the first time since she had a legal abortion.
The attachment kept growing day by day.
It's not a human life. Why do you have to kill it? Nothing you could justify to say that she should have to carry it to bury it.
I get really nervous when the government gets into people's personal lives.
Then on Tuesday.
Unfortunately, it turned into an assault on both of my parents. It gets worse, Dr. Phil.
That's Tuesday.
Today we're talking about body language and how to spot a liar. Now, this next story is about the heartbreaking murder of a 5-week-old child, Caleb Wisnand, who was found in a shallow grave, killed by blunt force trauma. Take a look.
The body of a 1-month-old baby has been found.
It has been 2 days since 1-month-old Caleb Wisnan Jr. went missing.
After a father's plea to the public to help find his infant son, he now stands accused in the child's death.
According to court records, 32-year-old Caleb Wisnan Sr. is responsible for the death of his 1-month-old son. Police say he then buried the child in a remote area.
We will make sure that justice will prevail for this baby.
This is the mother, and this is one of, if not the first time they spoke about this, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's first take a look at just what they had to say.
I don't remember a lot, but I did remember I was breaking up, you know, with the cops. But I know that if anybody's got anything, any places that I could have gone, anybody, you know who you are. Family ain't the same without family.
I've got so much trouble with this, I don't even know where to begin.
So watch him. First of all, he sees the woman he's with as an object that he is adapting, meaning he's releasing nervous energy as he squeezes her shoulder. And while we say that shaking your head no when you're telling a story doesn't always mean that you're not telling the truth, it certainly does in his case. No eye contact whatsoever. So there's a tremendous amount of red flagging going on here. Never mind the fact he is not coherent in his sentence structure.
Yeah, he says he's breaking up with the police. What the hell does that mean? I was breaking up with the cops?
I don't remember much, but I remember I was breaking up with the cops. Kind of a crazy sentence, yeah.
Yeah, and he's saying, but I did remember I was breaking up, you know, with the cops. But I know that if anybody's got anything, any places that I could have gone, anybody, you know who you are. So is he trying to say here, I don't remember what happened, but somewhere in there I lost my baby?
He's trying to let you to show he's confused. Yes, he's trying to show, I'm not sure what happened. You nailed it. I'm just confused about what happened. I'm not sure. He doesn't have the story straight yet of how to work this out as what's happened to this child.
And I understand if you're comforting your partner, but I don't think I see people stroking their partner's hair with their knuckles.
He's pulling her in. He rewards her when she actually says what he wants by actually patting her shoulder.
Yeah. At the same time, he's using her as an adapter. Those are the things we use. We've talked about, you know this, but those things where we're trying to get rid of that built-up stress and tension, we can actually use a person for that. Because when you pull on your arm, you press things against you, when you put your arm in your mouth, it sends signals to relax and calm down. And that's what he's using her for, a lot of that.
Yeah.
So one thing to point out, when we say adapter, what we mean is just a way of releasing nervous energy, and they can become habits, and all of you have those as well. The person closest to you knows what they are.
Yeah, and you'll see people do that. They'll do it maybe getting behind something. They'll do it holding on to someone else like this. You'll see it sometimes with people even raising their arms up to release heat from their underarm area because they're heating up really fast. And so they'll look like a bird sometimes because you'll see them doing this to get heat. That's an adapter trying to get their body heat down, right?
Exactly, exactly.
All right, let's look at the next clip.
This is the best I can do.
And there's other pictures with us together, but
I didn't.
Trying to crop him and do stuff with this phone is not working very well. But we sent him to the investigator. Hopefully the press gets him. I pray that they do.
One thing that I want to comment here is when somebody doesn't want to talk about what matters, they will overemphasize irrelevant detail.
Right.
And so they can, because you're burning time. And he's talking about, okay, I don't know if I can crop with this phone, and I sent it to them, and I'm not sure if they got... While he's talking about that, he's not answering any questions. He's not talking about anything that really matters. He's over-exemplifying, over-filling in irrelevant detail. And at this point, you've not heard any emotion. Where would you be? And you always have to use yourself as a baseline. Imagine where you would be if you had a 5-week-old baby that had just disappeared. Would you be talking about cropping a phone picture?
You just hit something that on the behavior panel I call chaff and redirect. The more garbage I spew, the more liable you are to pick up on one of those and forget about the topic. So if I just talk about cropping, you'll go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then give me a chance to talk about something else. It's a lot easier to be deceptive than to lie. It's much easier to catch a person in a lie than a person who's deceptive. And that spewing information to give you a lead to pick up on is a way of being deceptive.
Yeah. And have they said this baby's name?
No, not yet.
You know, one of the things you'll see is the use of pronouns, distancing from the deceased, because if you say their name, it gets really personal. They don't even use the pronouns. They're just kind of talking about this in general.
Yeah, they'll say, he's missing, find him, like we saw before, completely distancing themselves from him. And these are all qualifiers, this guy says. Everything coming out of his mouth is a qualifier, making sure we believe him, adding things to it.
He's actually moved all the way from her right to quarter behind her, to a little behind her, to now completely behind her. What do you make of that? I want to talk about things that need to be talked about.
Hate crimes in the U.S. rose last year to the highest level in more than a decade.
Why am I being targeted just for looking the way I am? It gets worse, Dr. Phil.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
I just started screaming her name, but I never heard anything back.
The police officers, we failed you.
More intense, more inclusive, more informative than ever.
The defunding plan has failed. It's a complete disaster.
People will do desperate things in order to survive. You're not solving anything by arresting those people.
We're not trying to win an argument. We're trying to solve a problem. Customers seem to be losing their cool at the drop of a hat. What the hell is going on? If you miss a day, you miss a lot. Oh, what's that? I want you all to pay close attention to Caleb Sr.'s body language in this clip where they talk about when they realized the baby was missing.
CJ was with him. He went to go pay gas at a gas station and realized that he was gone. And he let the police know and me know that he was missing.
How's the rest of the family holding out? I know this was a tough ordeal, but
it's been taking a toll on everybody.
Everybody's saying prayers. Everybody's keeping an eye out for him.
I guess if this went on, he would have run behind the building.
Exactly.
But he's actually moved all the way from her right to quarter behind her, to a little behind her, to now completely behind her.
Exactly.
What do you make of that?
That's a barrier. That's anything you can put between you and the other person.
Greg?
So a couple of things. I always say that whatever a person does body language-wise leaves residuals. He's a nail biter, which means he has nervous energy release of some kind typically. So we look for where that goes. He is so uncomfortable when they ask the question and he says, they didn't know. He almost tells us the truth. They didn't know, only I knew. But his body shifts, his chin drops to protect his throat, and his body tries to get smaller. When that doesn't work, he moves to a barrier, moves to her, and then he does something I typically call sacred space. He gets a hold of her, behind her, and he starts to move his hands to release nervous energy. All that time, not able to finish a sentence and allowing her to cover the sentence because he knows she's going to give a better answer than he can. Those are all red flags. He should deny that he would know anything. Watch this. See his shoulder fluttering, see his breathing increase. All of that stuff is a good indicator that something's going on in his head that we want to dig into further.
Talk about the instinctual response of protecting the vulnerable areas by tucking in here versus being out here.
Yeah, so we're the only animal that walks around with our soft white underbelly exposed. So when we get really afraid, something has to happen. We cross our elbows into our side. We create an exoskeleton. We may put our hands up in front of us to protect our throat. We drop our chin to protect our throat. And even in a real confession, when you're in an interrogation room, we know that a real interrogation starts with protecting the throat out of shame and then opens up. So the human body does a lot of autonomic things without us planning for it, and that's what we're reading, or those fight or flight signs.
So do y'all get what we're saying here? It's just instinctual. This isn't something where somebody says, okay, I'm under attack. I think the interrogator's going to grab my throat. It's just instinctual. The animal part of us knows we're under attack. So you start closing up and protecting. And somebody that knows how to read this, you know, okay, I'm now talking about something that's a threat to them.
Exactly.
This is a matter to them, so I know this is where I need to start pressing.
We're also seeing that on her here as well, but throughout the video as well. Her head is cocked forward just a little bit.
Yeah. All right, next, the cold-blooded murders of a mother and her 2 sons and the attempted murder of the father made headlines across America. But what shocked people the most was the mastermind behind the evil plot, their 16-year-old daughter. We'll talk about that next. This is the most important season of Dr. Phil in 21 years. Now, you asked me the tough questions, and I'm answering them right now. On Fill in the Blanks, I'm giving you an exclusive sneak peek at all the upcoming topics and an exciting update about how you can be more included in our conversations. Now, the thing I'm most excited about is
Fill in the Blanks, available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
About what to look for, particularly when somebody's under pressure and they're trying to give answers to convince somebody, but their body's not congruent with their words. Their words are telling something that they don't want to say because there are so many systems that you got to control at one time, right?
Exactly.
And getting everything flowing, if you're telling the truth, that's not a problem. But if you're trying to pre-screen everything you're thinking before you say it, and your body is reacting to a fear response because you're trying to hide something, and if the stakes are really high, then your physiology starts going all over the chart. Exactly. And it's hard to control. It's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. You know, you can say, well, I need to get my breathing right. Well, how about my eye contact? Oh, well, I don't want to seem too stiff. Well, I don't want to be rocking back and forth. Oh, well, I got to make sure I say the right thing. So it's like playing whack-a-mole, and you can't get all the moles whacked.
Exactly. That's why people say, when we're training people in body language and interrogators, they say, you're teaching people how to lie. You're teaching people how to get away with things. You can't teach them how to keep all those things at bay at one time because something's going to leak and something's going to get out.
Yeah, an octopus couldn't get all the moles.
The more conscious you are, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because now you're scanning everything, and that divides your attention from what you're trying to say. So it's like somebody that's giving a speech, and they have a public speaking phobia. So they get up in front of the audience, and they're afraid they're going to come across as stupid. Well, they get up there, and they're scared to death, so half of their consciousness is their fear, and half of it's on the task. Well, now they do come across as stupid, because half of their intellect is over here and only half is giving the speech. So they do, well, because they've divided their attention. Now I want to move on to an interview I did with a young woman named Erin Caffey. Some of you may remember this. At the time, she was in prison serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 40 years for masterminding the plot to murder her family.
An attack on a Rains County family left a mother and her 2 sons dead and a father in the hospital. The victims were found in a burning house near Emory, 60 miles east of Dallas. The couple's daughter may have played a role in the crime.
It was early Saturday morning when father and husband Terry Caffey crawled to his neighbor's house after being shot. Police say Penny Caffey and her 8 and 13-year-old sons were shot and stabbed multiple times before dying. The house was then set on fire. In custody are 18-year-old Bobby Johnson, 20-year-old Charles Wade, and 19-year-old Charles Wilkinson. He's the boyfriend of 16-year-old Erin Caffey. She's the victim's daughter and has also been arrested.
Well, now let's look at what Erin says happened the night her mother and 2 brothers were brutally murdered, and then the house was set on fire.
Let's fast forward to that night. How does this go down on the night that it happened?
We had talked at school that morning, and she said, just let's kill your parents. It will, run away to Maine together, and everything will be okay. I'll call my friend, and I'll come pick you up at 12. And that night around 11:45, I knew he was out there, so I made a phone call. I said, where are you at? And he said, well, hurry up and get out here, and hung up. So I walked out the house and picked up my little dog, Buddy, and was petting him all the way to the end of the driveway. Before I knew it, there was a car that came, and it was Bobby and Charles.
Okay. Now, I did the interview, so I'll let you guys respond to what you're seeing and hearing with her.
Okay. The basics of it, when we see it, are her arms are under and hands are under the table. We see her move around a little bit, so we know she's adapting. We can see it happening. She's talking very quietly. Sometimes she'll begin at the beginning of the sentence will be louder than the end of the sentence. That's called fading facts. As you deliver information and you're not sure about it and you know it's not true, then you get quieter as you go along. And you may get that gravelly voice as you get along as well. But hers gets more whispery, gets more airy as she goes along. We've seen all kinds, and then she gets forward, and you can also see that head goes down a little bit, like Greg was talking about earlier. But she's trying to almost romance you as she goes along. Greg and I have a thing where we call this romance, where you're giving too much information, you're looking at him, you don't want to look away. And that's what's going on here. She's stuffing her face toward you to get closer to you. And you did a great job, because most people in this situation, they'll start asking questions during that. And those pauses are giving her a little bit of time to either redirect or do something else, or start bringing up qualifiers. And so that keeping it like that, which you obviously know how to do, is just, you can't say anything better about that kind of stuff.
Craig?
Yeah, a couple of things I would note. Number one, we measure blink rate because when you start to feel stress, your eyes try to wet themselves by lowering the lids. And because the lids themselves are dry, it causes your blink rate to increase. I say her blink rate is yesterday. She blinked yesterday. She's so focused on you. She's so worried about your approval that there's not anything normal going on in her body. Her blink rate should be about 15, 18 a minute, and it's 0 as she's focused on you. When she talks about time, which is something she's hiding, watch that forehead rise to ask for approval. That's the only time we see much out of her. And Scott's point with her hands under the table is she's kind of mirroring what you're doing, is she's adapting and releasing nervous energy. Yeah, this was one of the worst, I think, that I've seen.
Yeah, I thought it was very manipulative in that she was telling the story almost like it's a story you're telling at a slumber party. Well, then the phone rang, and so I went outside. You notice the lilt in her voice?
Yes.
And then she works in, I picked up my little dog, Buddy, and petted him all the way down the driveway, because who doesn't like a puppy petter?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, really.
Except for you killed your parents.
Yeah. Right before I killed my parents and burned down the house, I petted my puppy, so we're even, right?
Right.
We talk about trading guilt or trying to assuage guilt. That's just a trade-off. She's trying to make herself human. If she can't read you sitting across the table from her with incredulous face as your mouth is looking at her like, what are you talking about? Your brow is up and your blink rate is up. She can't see that.
The moment she claims she agreed to let her boyfriend and his friend murder her whole family.
So you're outside, and he says, I'm here to kill your parents, so what happened?
I go to get in the car, I have no shoes on, no nothing, and he's grabbing at me for not having, being ready, and not having my bags or anything. Then we drive down to, like, this rundown church. We were trying to get out of it. Oh, we'll just run away. But, you know, they kept egging me on about, you know, and I just guess it was like feeding into it.
So did you finally say okay?
Yes, sir.
You finally said, okay, go kill my parents, my mother and my father. The woman that brought me into the world, people that have fed me and clothed me and housed me and loved me every day of my life, sure, go kill them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Scott?
Everything we're seeing there tells us there's nobody in there, nothing in there whatsoever. She's talking about killing her family and how she's, in other words, it's okay. You know what I mean?
And you have to put this in context, okay? Because understand what she's talking about here is they went in the house and they had guns and a machete, and they almost decapitated her mother with the machete, and her father testified after he'd been shot in the face. And then she had them go upstairs and find her two brothers and kill them. They weren't in the mix. They weren't downstairs. They weren't there. She had them seek them out and kill them just because. And her answer to me was, yeah,
well,
sure.
Nothing matters to her but self. If you look at her, you can't miss it. If she can't read you sitting across the table from her with incredulous face as your mouth is looking at her like, what are you talking about? Your brow is up and your blink rate is up. She can't see that. She doesn't care about anyone. And she is going on about the story as if it's just telling you about a slumber party. And when the guy says, I'm gonna kill your parents, well, I got in the truck. Not what?
One of the things that psychopaths do is the expression they recognize most easily is fear. Obviously, you're not showing fear on this. She doesn't see that you're like, well, you got to be kidding me. She doesn't see that expression you have, so she's not reading into that. So that's another psychopath cue.
Now, why do we choose this out of all the ones that we can have to show you? Is because this young woman sang in the choir. She went to church every time the doors were open. She looks like every young woman in the neighborhood. You've got to watch for these cues about a psychopath. You've got to watch, do they have the normal reactivity that you see in other people? You watch them if you're watching something on television, or something is broken in the house, or your daughter or son that's hanging out with them hurts themselves, falls, hurts their knee or whatever. How do they respond? Because if they have no empathy, if they have no feeling, if they have no reactivity for that, are they capable of being involved in something like this? How far does it go? Well, so far we've looked at murderers, but does this deception detection work on celebrities who are used to being scrutinized? Well, yeah, it does. We'll take a look at R. Kelly's unbelievable interview with Gayle King for CBS News after the break. Legendary singer-songwriter R. Kelly is fighting sex trafficking charges as several women and 2 men who were in R. Kelly's celebrity orbit have told the court that he groomed them for unwanted sex and psychologically tormented them throughout the 90s.
R. Kelly is back in a New York City federal courtroom today. Federal prosecutors say R. Kelly is a predator who dominated and controlled underage girls.
Several women are expected to testify over the next month.
A former girlfriend told the court that Kelly brainwashed her and others.
She met and began having sex with him when she was in high school, and she testified that she was beaten during her 5-year relationship with Kelly.
Another person that was brought up at the very beginning for prosecutors was the late singer Aaliyah, and someone within his camp was able to get a fake ID to say that Aaliyah was actually 18 at the time that she was 15.
Disgraced R&B star R. Kelly has been sentenced to 30 years behind bars.
Okay, now we're going to take a look at this, and again, I want everyone to think about this. If you're watching an interview on the news or whatever it might be, the first thing you need to do is ground yourself and ask yourself, okay, what would a normal, functioning, fully emotionally mature person be experiencing during something like this? What would be, you've got to have some kind of reference point. Would you be embarrassed? Would there be humility? Would there be anger? Would there be, whatever? Ask yourself what you think would be a normal reference point, because you have to have something to compare to. And a lot of things you might not have any to compare to, but you can ask yourself, how would I feel if I was in this situation? In this clip, Kelly is asked point blank about his sexual habits. His body language completely betrays him here. Take a look.
Have you ever had sex
No.
with anyone under the age of 17?
No.
Never?
No.
I have to tell you, it's so hard to believe that based on all that we've read.
I'm gonna tell
and
you
what the
something,
women
Gail.
have
There's
said
one
about you.
I'm gonna
What
tell
the
you
women have
something.
said about you.
What women said about me. What women. So nobody's allowed to be mad at me and be scorned and lie on me.
So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is it that's incongruent about that?
First thing is his head movements. When he says no, he says yes. And when he says yes, he says no.
But it's pretty obvious, right?
Exactly.
Robin and I are best friends with Gail, and she couldn't believe it. He needed to not do that interview.
He's a pretty big fella. And when somebody like that's getting up on you and doing this number, and she just keeps coming forward.
Oh,
you
not
just
Gail.
Yeah, apparently.
As a performer, R. Kelly is used to being in the public eye and having two faces, one for the public and then his other real self. So which face is shown in this clip?
Stop it. Y'all quit playing. Quit playing.
Robert.
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. Y'all, I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
Greg.
Yeah, note to self. I'm being accused of being volatile, angry, abusive. What do? I just show you. It's easy enough. I mean, you don't need a lot of body language here. The few things to pay attention to is that he is not talking to Gail. He's talking to the camera. He's talking to his intended audience, not her.
But let's look at her again. She didn't flinch.
Yeah.
He's completely losing it, and look at her. Nothing. Nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's
we love her.
Oh, yeah. She's our favorite.
And you think about halfway through, he realized this probably isn't the best idea.
Right. And that's when he just guns it and goes, I'm in it. I'm in it, and just goes forward and says, okay, here I am. And just, at that point, what does he have?
Yeah.
He has to keep going, has to lean into it.
Next, she truly believes that she saw a UFO one fateful night in 1969, but did she? Well, let's find out after the break. We had a lively discussion about what are you feeling most passionate about lately? Is there something you want to talk about and think others need to be talking about more? If so, we want to hear from you. Log on to drphil.com homepage, click on any of the links under Be on the Show. On September 1st, 1969, a number of people in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, reported seeing an object resembling a giant flying saucer in the sky. Now, Jane Green is one of those people. Let's hear her story, and then I want Greg and Scott to help determine if they think she's telling the truth.
Seconds. It lifted up, went this way, lifted up again, and went over the mountain.
Okay. Audience, do you believe her? I gotta tell you, I believe she believes every word she's saying. What do you see?
Nothing. We see everything that we should see when someone's being honest.
Greg?
Yeah, body language is a sentence. All of her mannerisms, her words, her concern, Everything goes at the same time. She's telling us what she remembers.
Guys, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I appreciate you sharing all of this.
It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
I really want to thank all of my guests today. Special thanks to body language experts Scott Rouse and Greg Hartley. You can find the Behavior Panel on YouTube. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share your story, log on to drphil.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And speaking of Facebook, I've got a Facebook group called Dr. Phil Fanatics. That's PHAN. It's a private group for superfans where you get all the latest Dr.